All right. I am here with Sarah Hirsh Bordo, and she is the founder and CEO at Women Rising. How's it going, Sarah?
Hi, Steve. Thanks for inviting me.
Yeah, I'm excited to really talk through this. But before we get into your success and your career, let's talk about your background. Like, what got you into business and ultimately the entertainment industry and everything?
Wow. I think for me, I'm sure I'm not the only one that's a fan of yours or a listener of yours, but I think that I have, to use your language, stepped on the lily pads of either invitations or opportunities that have come my way that either feel like a problem that I haven't solved yet or exactly the kind of risk I love to take. I had 9 internships in college and I loved working. Like I just loved it. I was so much more. I'm a Taurus, so I'm a grounded creative. But for me, I think I just always loved, feeling problems and navigating problems with my hands. I liked being told stories of how to do things, but I really loved being in the thing. So for me, I was a double major and double minor in college and had these internships and started in advertising and brand work at the Estee Lauder companies in New York City. And then I was in advertising for a while at agencies like DDB and GSD&M in Austin. And having then transferred into, more corporate exec roles out in Hollywood, now I'm on the way other side of the table, much more, creative and sort of scrappy and innovative. And instead of leading teams, I'm finding that I'm most excited about creating alone. And that's very new for me. So that was a really rowdy answer. But I think, for so many of us, we've had the good fortune of almost hitting ceilings quickly. And at that point, you're either in a real curiosity track where you just want to try all kinds of new things on, or you're in a real Las Vegas risk track and you just want to kind of test the waters and, test your creative mettle. And I'm 47 now, and I've tried so many of the things, and now I'm in a new place.
Nice. Very nice. So let's start by unpacking your first, what you would consider success. And I know you have multiple exits that you've gone through, and I want to talk about how that startup story began. Like, how did you get started with the first sort of successful venture?
Well, I don't love the word. I think success is completely subjective. And so that's not a word that you're going to hear me come out of my mouth. And you're also not going to hear ambition come out of my mouth, even though we live in a very sort of, achievement oriented world. And so people put the word ambition on me, but that's never been what my work has been about. I definitely am probably more addicted to drive than I am curious about ambition, because I've never known where I'm going. It's just presented me with choices that have felt so hard to say no to. As it relates to your question around, the success of my ventures, I start things because I think they're missing. I don't start things because I think I can do them better than somebody else. And for me and for Women Rising, I was told by a female boss once that I belonged more in an apron than in an office. And our relationship was so informative for me, because sometimes or at least in my career, I found that the biggest learnings and the biggest catalysts come from something that hurts, not something that's comfortable. And so for me, when I knew that I wanted to create Women Rising, it was basically to help change the narrative of women being threatened by each other, wanting to be a part of the solution of women supporting other women. And so that was how Women Rising was born. But I didn't know what Women Rising was going to be. And, you know, I've tried to not give my my ventures in films gender, but Women Rising is kind of this first daughter that I chose to have. But with the success of Women Rising, I think that I've felt success in the things that have completely kicked my ass and taken me down. And because I've gotten back up again, and I have felt success in things that have won awards and people talk about and they love and they've, you know, I've brought forward stories that have either been a mirror or a salve for their own journeys. And so for me, success is defined in tons of various ways.
Mm-hmm. To the individual. I like that. Everybody has their own version of what success means. And I think that goes beyond like the numbers of a company, but like what that can do for everybody at the company. You know, I've heard a lot of different great stories about how many people you employ full time, like how many people have families that you employ, how many different like lines of support you have as an operator. I think is a really cool way that people can sometimes measure their own success, which I've enjoyed hearing over the years of just whatever you've created as a business company, whatever you want to call it. If that can support a bunch of families, that's a pretty big win to a lot of people. Like they would view that as success.
Absolutely. Or you give them stories or you give them this container. You know, I think for me, whether it's producing TED Women and directing TED Women or creating the Women's March or teams at Paramount or teams at MGM or my, you know, former startup, which I had an exit for, now Live. It's like, to me, I'm doing kind of me the best I can when I've created a container where people can rock and roll with their own gifts and I can just get out of the way, but create this space that allows the freedom for gifts to rise and not feel competitive within.
And when it comes to like, for women listening to this that are either operating a business or thinking about starting one, what would you say were some of the things, like you mentioned Now Live, when you guys were growing as a company, as a team, what were ways that you guys were managing and defining your success? I think that's a good segue because we just talked about success and everything. What did you see that as, other than the exit, of course, but what in the day-to-day were you guys viewing as success?
But do you want me to answer that, brother, as it relates to female entrepreneurship?
Yeah. In as an operator, what types of things were you managing that you would say were your success as the operator? And what tip could you give a woman that was running her business that could change her perspective on?
Well, if I'm able to talk directly to the female entrepreneurs, I would say, hello, brave sisters out there. I would love to talk to you anytime. I think that if you've stepped up to the plate as a female operator in a position of leadership that not only requires that other people believe in you, but a heightened belief that you have in yourself. I think that what I've seen, and I certainly struggled with it at a time until, you know, kind of a mentor and a team member kind of called me out. And I do this on set when I'm directing a commercial or a film. I don't think any of us have all the fucking answers. I think the biggest mistake that we can make is pretend that we do. I think I don't know, I like to think that everything is a learning experience, the good and the bad. And to me, I don't think that we rise or fall alone. I think we rise or fall with the team and the family that we adopt to do it with. I was saying this to Steve before we got on. It's taken me a long time to kind of get comfortable with telling my own story. I love hiding behind other people's. I love putting the camera and the lights on others, and I think that one of the things that I very much believe is that seeing what's possible is just an absolute activator for others that don't know what's possible until they see it. And for me, I felt like a bit of a fraud that I was hiding behind other people's stories. And here I was, an entrepreneur who had been graced with a lot of just very good luck and incredible blessings of people that believed in me. But I think that we as women can do a much more comfortable, graceful, and ownable job of standing in that light. I mean, if you've stepped up to that plate, it's a combination of faith from the inside and faith from the outside that has kind of brought you to that moment. The amount of female entrepreneurs that I mentor that are struggling, and they're struggling to override stories they've been told as a girl, as a child. They're overriding stories that they've been told from men in their family or even women in their family. Owning kind of the narrative of what you can be the best you can, I think ripples to success on the outside.
I like that. Boiling some of it down that you just said, shining light on others.
Hopefully there was something in there.
Yeah, no. Shining light on others, I think, is it's a cool way of viewing, like, operating a company, especially because if you can shine light on others and if you can lift everyone up that is on your team, as you guys are, all running in the same direction, everybody's trying to accomplish the company's goal or mission, it makes perfect sense to have that of like shining light on people that deserve it, that are hustling, that maybe aren't very vocal about wins that they're having on a daily basis. Maybe they're just heads down, quietly crushing it, and they're just not, the loudest person in the room. I think that's a really good into like shining light on people who aren't going to do it themselves per se. And I think that's a really good piece. And I wanted to also highlight that what you're building now with Women Rising, it was recognized as like one of the most innovative and purpose-driven companies by Inc. magazine, which is a huge win. And I think when you get an award like that, there are some knowledge nuggets out there that people are probably thinking about. They're like, okay, well, how do I make a purpose-driven company? Or how do I make a purpose-driven nonprofit or whatever it is? So what kind of advice could you share? I mean, in general, around creating a purpose-driven company?
Yes. Well, first, let me just say that Inc. accolade was, less certainly an award or an award show, and more inclusion in a very special list of others that we were highlighted in an article a while ago. I don't think now I could ever be a part of creating something that wasn't impact-based. I wasn't always like that. I am like that now. That's a huge driver now to me. I think that those of us that are privileged enough to be where we are, to have the capacity and the health that we have and the education and the platforms that we have, to me, it's just, if it isn't making something better, then I'm not interested. It would be really, there are some days, over the last few years, because Women Rising pre-COVID had a sizable team, and now Women Rising is me and a part-time head of finance. And that loss was humbling and a reckoning, to be sure. But it also kind of gave me this opportunity to really go inward and reflect on, what is this even about? What am I even, what am I hustling for anymore? When you get to the point where you've had these beautiful, ebbs and flows of, quote, success, I'll put it in someone else's quote. I think that you end up with these really nice moments of reflection of, what do I still love about this work? Because it's hard as fuck. This, being an entrepreneur and the risks that we take, it's all of us. It takes all of you. And for me, I think that it makes it so much more worth it for me to be a part of a conversation around either elevating women, elevating women's truths, elevating women's issues. But I never do that in a silo without male champions. And so that's one of the things that I really want to talk about, Steve, as it relates to, yes, I have a female anchored company. Yes, I tell women and girl stories. Yes, I build stages for women and girls. But at this point, I think that we can all agree that issues facing women and girls are not just women, don't just affect women and girls. They affect the husbands and the partners and the dads and the colleagues and the fathers and the brothers and the sons. And I think that one of the things that has helped me reach these levels over the years, and is just to feel this belief from my male colleagues and male comrades and male champions who see that what I'm doing isn't about Sarah and it isn't about money, and that they are supporting me just as much as my female teammates or female colleagues or female donors or investors. And I think that to have that kind of championship from a place of authenticity, because hopefully they see and feel that this is very real to me, that's really made a huge difference.
Yeah. A lot of support from everybody, I think, is key. And just to kind of circle back to the Now Live, transaction that happened. What was the team size when it went through, and did people stay? Did people leave? What did that look like?
So my co-founder and we had built a company to just about, I think in the end, we were about close to 12 people. We had hit a threshold within a year's time of revenue that was indicative of a good trajectory ahead. And what we were seeing, and my co-founder and I, honestly, the biggest gift that I received was a fight between the two of us that made it pretty clear that we had exactly the same vision of where we were reaching, but that we simply had different visions for, around the corner. And most of our staff went different ways. A handful of the programming team stayed behind and moved with the team ahead. And interestingly enough, even though at the time it was heartbreaking to me, because it was my first real exit, the buyout funded Women Rising, helped fund my first film, and that changed everything for my life and my career and for Women Rising and for our entire trajectory of growth and films and events. And I wouldn't change any of it. And so I think thinking back, it's always these moments that they feel so loud, and it feels like you know exactly one way how to handle a point of crisis, but it can also be a profound gift. So just because, Now Live, as we had initially envisioned it, was on the exact same course, but what it gave was for my co-founder and I to each kind of chase dreams from what we had created. And that's never a bad thing.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, it's good that you look at it as like a gift of a fight with co-founders, because I've heard that many times. Nobody's referred to it as a gift.
Yeah.
Nobody's referred to it as a gift before. So I like that, because it shows that you could see that the future would have been either more conflict around the vision for where you guys were headed, or just it needed to happen sooner rather than later, which is a great reframe of figuring out, like, okay, we need to do our own things. We need to figure out our different paths and all of that. So it's a really cool reframe of how to look at a co-founder quarrel, if you will, that many people listening to this have probably had. So I think that's really good. So that takes us to the finale question. And then after that, we'll talk about what you're really working on now. And I think there's something that you wanted to share with us about your current project. But the finale question is, knowing what you know now, what would you tell Sarah 10 years ago?
Okay, so 10 years ago, I was 37, and this was the year that I sold Now Live. This is the year that we went our separate ways, so that's kind of wild. And I had just moved to Austin from LA, and I would tell myself what I just told you. I would say, you don't see it now, sweet girl, but it's a goddamn gift. And what's about to happen is going to blow your mind in a way that you get to explore a new chapter that's the one you're supposed to be on, not the one that other people other people's ambition wanted for you.
Well said. Well said. So that takes us to current time. What is it that you can share about the, sneak peek, or anything that you want to share with us about a project that you're working on?
Yeah, sure. I think the one thing that I will share about it is that the last few years I've mentioned sort of introspection and reflection as a kind of solo creator, brought me to some reckonings that I found myself in the middle of COVID, almost doing a documentary about myself and my own health and my own empowerment. Because as I've shared, Women Rising is an empowerment, media and production company. So about 3 months ago, I greenlit a 1,000-person empowerment and health survey across American women. And the juxtaposition is specifically related to women with autoimmune conditions and their empowerment and the way they were raised. More women are being diagnosed with an autoimmune condition than breast cancer and heart disease combined. I know it's sort of overly said, but this really is the climate crisis of women's health. And so I'm about to release what I'm kind of lovingly calling my first docu-study. And I have one of the former U.S. Surgeon Generals on board as a champion for the project. And it will probably have a video destiny at some point, and maybe a docu-series structure. But I'm excited to ignite a conversation about how I basically believe that female empowerment is the missing modality in women's health. And that's going to be releasing in the next 2 weeks' time.
Very cool. Very cool. And where can people go and learn more about it?
They can go to womenrising.com to learn more about it.
Very cool. Very cool. Well, those are all the questions that I have for you, Sarah. Thank you so much for coming on and sharing your story. Yeah. And everybody that's listening, all the links that Sarah mentioned will be in the show notes, whether you're on iTunes or Spotify. And thank you again for coming on.
Thanks, Steve.